Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tony Sharkey from the Football Transfer Forum. We are delivering an online briefing titled FIFA Football Agent Regulations. Where are we now? I'm joined by Roberto Carlos Branco Martins, who is the General Counsel of the European Football Agents Association. Hi, Roberto. How are you?
I'm fine, Tony. Thank you very much. Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, we can hear you great. Where are you, Roberto?
I'm actually, physically, I am at my office. Mentally, I'm all over the place, Tony, lately.
Has FIFA got you that way? No comment. Yeah. And we're also really delighted to be joined by Dr. Gregor Reiter, who's legal counsel at the European Football Agents Association and also a member of FIFA's Football Agent Working Group. Good afternoon, Gregor. Where are you and how are you?
Hey, Tony, I'm fine. Thanks. I'm at home in Germany, sitting at my desk and seeing what the remainder of the day will bring.
Great. So let's just go through today's agenda, the running order. We're going to go to Roberto to start off with for a bit of an overview and some pointers about the implementation of the football agent regulations. Then we're going to talk about legal challenges, of which there's been quite a few. Gregor is going to talk about Germany. He's our expert and your former managing director of the German Football Agents Association. That's right, isn't it, Gregor?
Yes, that is correct. Until 2020, I was that.
So you were the guy who can really let us know about what's happening in Germany. We're going to then touch on national football agent regulations and what is happening with the member national associations. We're going back to Gregor for an update on the FIFA Agents Working Group. And we're going to finish off with a Q&A. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We've got George Whitehouse, who works for the Football Transfer Forum. He's supporting the webinar. The chat is open. We'll be sharing a few things in the chat with you. Feel free to share your LinkedIn profiles if you want to network. But if you've got any questions, and we'll be trying to hit as many questions as we can, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll get through as many as we can. So to begin with, I'm going to ask Roberto to sort of kick it off. Roberto, you can start with just a general sort of overview from where you guys are.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. Well, from the perspective of EFAA, and as reflected also in discussions with the board, well, in terms of a formal statement, I think it's more synergy on what has been said before, and I think that people that are also present at this talk might be aware of where EFAA stands for, and what, in that sense, also the official statement would be. Obviously, EFAA cannot deny that there's an absolute necessity for a solid legal framework that works as much as possible in a uniform way in all countries in the world, in all countries that are relevant in the international transfer market, obviously. However, having said that, if, as we see now is the case, if such a strong framework is so harmful for a proper functioning of the competition, and I mean competition in a double sense. In the one hand, competition as from a sporting perspective, the actual football competition, because it has an impact. But I also mean, obviously, competition in the sense of the market, because it will have an impact on the market as well. We already see that with, if I'm correct, 4,500 now licensed agents, but I think alone in the last examination there were 10,000 people taking the examination. So a quick calculation of that number would say that maybe if you include the first exam, maybe 30% of people that were previously registered and active as an agent are now able to continue their activities, which is an absolute nightmare, obviously, I would say.
So you're saying you think from the agents that were operating previously, at the moment, there's only 30% of the agents?
Well, I don't have the exact number, but if the last examination, almost 11,000 applied for the examination, and FIFA has released on the platform the licensed agents, and the numbers of licensed agents 4,500. You know how many people took the exam beforehand, so that's less than 50%. So there was my calculation to add a couple more in relation to the first. Okay, let's say worst case, best case scenario, maybe 40% have passed. So you see there are a lot of people in a lot of problems, I would say, because it's a direct impact. So we oppose any system that has an effect that leads to this result. So this is just clear consequence of this situation. It doesn't mean that EFA is against regulation. It doesn't mean that EFA is against a certain form of a threshold that guarantees or at least enhances professionalism to enter into the activities of players, agents, and agencies in general. But it needs to be proportionate. And now it creates a huge threat on players, clubs, agents, and in our opinion, the football ecosystem as such. And you will see that it's not only players and agents, but also clubs. I will come back to that later on when I discuss a couple of issues in relation to other countries.
But Roberto, there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace, isn't there? And this is one of the reasons why we're holding this webinar. And I noticed we've got some lots of football agents on the call. And it's that confusion that this has, caused. It's a real. There's a lot of questions out there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions out there because I've took the liberty also, Tony, to reflect that in the presentation, and maybe some of the elements of the agenda are implicitly included in the talk. For example, you have the bullet points to focus on the national football agent regulations. Well, I just made a couple of phone calls also to be aware of the main countries where they are at this moment, and people from Italy are just saying at the moment we don't have any clue about what the national football agent regulations will look like. And seriously, that really that really hits me, because I just can't understand, with all the legitimate objectives that obviously FIFA had in mind, which I can't deny are realistic, because if an objective is that you want to have more transparency and professionalism in the industry, okay, I can't do anything else than agree to that. But the ways in which these regulations are now approached and implemented and leaving a total twilight zone for people active, I think it's incredible, to be honest. I think it's a situation where people have not been taken serious enough. In Italy, if you look at the situation there, maybe just to already open a little bit of a potential discussion. Not every person in Italy, is fluent in English, or is fluent in French, or is fluent in Spanish.
Yeah, I thought that was a real mistake, Roberto.
One of the big markets in the world, Tony, and people are not able to take the examination in their own language, so that's for me an absolute no-go.
And German as well, German, Gregor, the German language was excluded, wasn't it, as well? It's Spanish, French, and English, wasn't it?
Yes, we were kicked off the official language list of FIFA due to probably not applying to the FIFA World Cup regulations in Qatar. I think the Germans voiced their opposition to some of the things that went on in that country too loudly for FIFA, and we were kicked off directly in that in that time frame when the debate about the captains binding was going on, the arm binding.
Tony, I also want to add, in that sense, I understand Gregor's perspective, but what also became clear to me in the course of the months, I think FIFA have a legitimate objective in mind, when regulating this profession in a way. And it's absolutely not the case that EFA, and I'm convinced other agent organizations as well, are against a form of regulation. And I'm also convinced that those agents are also pro, maybe even quite a strict form of regulation. But no one is pro regulations that are disproportionate and that will lead to a direct danger for your business. And that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. So in any case, from an overall perspective, and also the voices I hear in the market, is that people expect / hope that all the court cases that are going on now, will lead to a situation where we will get out of this stalemate situation, and that eventually there will be regulations based on a proper fundament with the okay of all the relevant parties included, and not being disproportionate, but a system of examinations and cross control till a certain extent. I think that should be welcomed, and I think that everyone that's active as an agent is basically feeling the same. I'm not convinced that leaving the activity totally open to the market will be beneficial for everyone involved. I do see a certain sports specificity where some sports authority should have a close look at what's going on, but we're not that sport specific that we should be totally encompassed by sporting regulations.
Yeah, I do agree, and I think there is a certain number of legacy agents who've already done the exam, and those agents who've just done the exam, which was the first one was in April, the second one was in September. The ones that have passed will be quite happy, and there was a lot of relief from agents that were they passed the exam. The study materials were immense that FIFA gave, but it was an open book. It was slightly easier than the first lot of exams that I took. The pass rate was 52% for the first one. So I think those agents who have got the license now, have passed the exam or got the legacy status rubber stamped by FIFA, just want to get on with the job, don't they? They just want to get started. But it's understanding, that's the central thing of this. Where are we now? So just go through with for us, Roberto, a little bit about the implementation as far as you see it. Some key points for the guys.
Do you want me to share the screen now, Tony?
Yeah, I do so. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, I think this works like this.
Yeah, perfect.
You're seeing my screen now, right? Okay, I will try not make it too much just slides, and I would say that we have to look if we could share maybe those slides afterwards. We have to discuss about that. Yeah. But there's quite a lot of text on it, but I would like to talk around it as well.
Perfect. Thanks.
So it's basically also focused on the impact on the day-to-day business. I thank my colleague Sophia that assisted me in making these slides. So basically implementation of the FAR, football agent services, other services, and some points of attention. I'm not going any more into issues such as the cap and dual representation. I assume that everyone is aware of those. It is more directed towards the day-to-day business in terms of practicalities. What do you need to take into consideration? And I give a couple of my views, which are also sketched due to some requests from members and clients of the law firm. Just for the sake of clarity, I think people know that I have a law firm, BMW Advocaten, but connected to that is EFA as from a consultancy perspective, and general counsel is what I do already for a number of years for EFA. So if we look at the implementation of the FAR, let's go to it directly. So by the 1st of October 2023, the FARs come into effect globally, and in essence, it will govern the occupation of football agents within the international transfer system, and the FAR shall apply. And that's already a very interesting one that everyone needs to take into consideration. It only applies in case of football agent services. And obviously, we also have other services, so we see already a lot of questions related to how do I define the activities that I'm carrying out. Because beforehand, it was obviously the case that the job placement element of the football agent services, of activities of agencies in general, was the core element, and that also a lot of agencies decided to only focus on the income from that activity and perhaps carry out also some other activities adjacent to it. However, now you really have to have a very clear perspective on what kind of services and activities am I carrying out. Are these activities that fall under football agent services, or are these activities that fall under other services? And we will touch upon that shortly later on. However, the intention was obviously to implement the FAR directly into national regulations. The FAR are quite clear and quite strict in that, and then the FAR would be implemented into NFAR, National Football Agent Regulations. But we know now that there are many countries, and especially in the big 5 leagues, where we have a total uncertainty about what will eventually happen with these football agent regulations. As we know, in Germany, the most critical elements of the FAR are suspended, but I'm happy that Gregor is here, so I'm quite sure that he will touch upon that in a very elaborate way after my talk. I'm especially interested also in his views in relation to the German link. If we look at Italy, I think that the situation we have now at the moment in Italy today is that there's still an ongoing discussion. The information I got quite recently is that at least the dual representation will not be implemented in Italy. So the limit on dual representation will not be implemented. But the agent associations are now still in contact or conflict or dispute. I don't know how friendly the relations are there at the moment with the Italian FA. And it's still not 100% clear what will happen there. For as far as I know, there is no national football agent regulation at the moment, and that they are looking to get something in place there from January onwards. So obviously that also leads to a lot of uncertainty, because if you're planning your activities now for the forthcoming window, like every agent is doing actually, you will not be able to understand what you can expect in Italy. In relation to France, I know there's also still some discussion going on. However, what I got confirmed from France is that there will be no FIFA examination in France. They will stick to their own national legislation, which means that there should actually be an exam in France or a form of equivalent from abroad. So if you're an agent not being resident in France, you need to show that that you have an equivalent status as the agent in France. No payments in relation to minors, which still is the case there. No payments in relation to other services, in terms of other services not being regulated by the law. And no breach of an exclusivity contract. So players can't work from a self-representation perspective there. Something that has explicitly been included in the FIFA football agent regulation. The player should always be able to represent himself, and that the payments are capped, but a cap of up to 10% of the value of the contract. So that is something that will remain in France. So you will have still the system as we know it now. We don't know if certain elements of the FAR will be implemented in France till the extent that national legislation in France allows so. Then I would say the mother of all arbitration cases against the FIFA football agent regulations, also falling on the very strict principle of confidentiality. So we're not allowed to say too much about it. What we do know and what is public knowledge at the moment is that the decision is expected on the 30th of November 2023. The English agents had the ambition to get a verdict out, a decision out before the entry into force of the FIFA football agent regulations. Unfortunately, that was not the case. So up until the 30th of November 2023, the existing FA regulations will continue to govern transactions within England. In terms of the big five, let's first focus on Spain. There will be a request for an interim measure being heard by the court on the 11th of October. So that is next week, within 6 days. And I think that the outcome will be known quite quickly. It will be focused on trying to suspend the regulations being in force in Spain. And then there will be like also a main case on the merits simultaneously. So in Spain, these regulations are also under fire.
Yeah, Roberto, I just had a question there. Obviously, this webinar, the scope of the webinar today, this briefing, is Europe. And you know, just tell the guys how important the European transfer system is compared to what happens in other territories in terms of the value of it and the number of agents that are operating. Because it seems to me that the vast, you know, England's a very big powerhouse in terms of financial and transfers. What is the sort of the strength of that European market that we're talking about today?
Well, I think we all know that the European market is the absolute pinnacle of the international football industry. People now tend to point also to the Middle East, more specific Saudi Arabia, but obviously it's still quite small compared to what's going on in Europe, the European Union and England. So it's the biggest markets, I think, in terms of internal fluctuation and migration of players, but also from countries outside of the European Union, outside of Europe. You know, so it's absolutely the biggest market. And I saw a very interesting graphic recently stating that I think the 20 biggest clubs in the world are actually falling under these scattered form of regulations without there being a uniform applicable. So I think the far majority of the market in terms of economy is falling on these regulations, which immediately
just to give you a number, according to FIFA, the total revenue in transfers in the 2022 was $621 million US. 599 million of that US dollars were done within the 52 national associations that make up UEFA. Basically, that number says everything about the importance of the European market when it comes to football.
So thanks for that, Gregor. That's really interesting. So what was the top figure? The total figure was
so the total figure was 621 million US dollars, and the one reflecting on the revenue done in Europe was 599. So well, 23 million US dollars were made outside of Europe.
Yeah, but it's 90 odd percent, isn't it? It's a very big number. So
yeah,
what we're getting at is that FIFA have got to get it right in Europe. They've got to get it right in the UK and in Europe.
Well, what FIFA needs to do is, I mean, with all due respect to all the other markets, they're irrelevant from an economic point of view.
Right.
It's only Europe that matters. So it should only be governed and constructed in accordance with European law. End of story.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And Roberto, just continue on there. You were just talking about what's happening in various territories in terms of the implementation. I mean, we haven't got to forget, Brazil, Japan, Saudi Arabia. There are other markets there, but it's really that juggernaut that Europe is all the revenues coming in terms of transfers through European clubs, really.
Yeah, indeed, and that's a big issue. I wouldn't have from the top of my head all the situations in the whole world. So we do focus for now on these countries in Europe in general. I think it's relevant to say also, Tony, the situation in the Netherlands, because that might be of value also for people that are listening now to this webinar from non-Big Five countries. The Dutch FA, maybe some of you know, ProAgent, the Dutch Agent Association, together with EFAA, are still in a pending court case against the KNVB and FIFA. We tried to get some interim measures out. The media was mentioned that the case was lost. However, that was not the case because there was never a decision on the merits. It was only that there was no clear, direct, harmful effect from a financial perspective because we couldn't make 100% clear what the financial impact will be, which would be obvious because there was no implementation of the regulation yet. So there was a little bit of a chicken and the egg story. But having said that, it did create huge pressure on the Dutch professional football clubs because they were confronted with a couple of issues. First, the majority of the cases, and I think all of the cases against these FIFA regulations are based on competition law. And if parties that are supporting the creation of an illegal cartel, which could be the case if these regulations turn indeed out to be illegal, then everyone being part of that cartel is jointly and severely liable for the damages that the market experiences. So you can imagine that if this cartel turns out to be illegal and the regulations turn out indeed to limit competition in an illegal way, and agents were used to earn maybe 10% and now can only invoice 3%, I don't think you need to be a star in algebra to find out what the amount of damages are, obviously.
Something, Roberto, I did want to ask you and Gregor, and maybe I was just a little bit ignorant of the fact. I thought that one of FIFA's key reasons for doing this was to sort of make a unilateral, so everyone knew what the regulations were. You could work between territories, you could do transfers between France, England, wherever. And that's not the case, is it? It just doesn't, that can, I mean, was that something that they tried to set out to do, or is that what have I got it wrong there? I thought it was going to be, that everyone could follow FIFA's rules and it made it easier to work between countries.
Well, I think you probably got a bit wrong because it's fairly easy to work between countries right now or under the old system, depending on where you are. So FIFA did not need to regulate that again. The old system certainly did have some flaws that needed to be attended to, but FIFA way overshot. And I think the main reason they introduced these new regulations is in line with what Infantino promised when he was elected FIFA president in 2015. He basically said he wants to drain the agent swamp. And the main focus of these regulations is the fee cap, is the fact that everybody in the future has to be paid and pay through a clearinghouse system.
Yeah.
But the core of the regulations is not needed to have the market have to become a functioning market. The opposite is the case. It will create less transparency. It will hurt the smaller clubs, the smaller countries, the smaller players, the smaller agencies. It's basically, if you ask me personally, I think it's a propaganda scheme from Infantino, period.
Roberto?
Well, I'll let my German friend be the bold one today. But I think that I agree to a certain extent, but I also disagree on some points. I do think that FIFA in the end was confronted with a situation that registration in every individual country, like we had with the regulation working with intermediaries, very tedious, and some countries even registration per individual transaction that led to loads of headaches around the world. So whatever goals lie beneath the motivation to come up with these regulations, I think we need to look into the objectives that are in the actual regulations, and those objectives, in my perspective, again, are legitimate. And I believe that if FIFA would have been looking for an instrument to regulate it in a proper way, obviously, I don't agree with the content of the regulations as they are now, which is, in my opinion, absolutely clear. But they've underestimated the impact of Europe, the national associations and the market. They've truly underestimated the impact of national legislation. In Italy, we have the CONI, the Olympic Committee, that's mandated, by national legislation, by the government, to regulate sports and to also delegate that mandate to national sports governing bodies. But it's all based on the law, civil laws. France, the same thing. Italy is a powerhouse. Germany goes their own way. We knew that in the past. And I don't think that it's feasible to dictate that from one very unilateral perspective. And then again, we've talked a lot about the whole consultancy process, leading to these regulations. Well, I've finally decided let's agree to disagree with FIFA in that respect. We believe from an agent perspective, and I'm sure we're not the only ones in the world of agents, that there was absolutely no proper consultation. And that's what you get. That's what you get. If you don't have a proper consultation and don't take everything into consideration, then I think you can expect these kind of problems. And I'm quite certain FIFA did expect these kind of problems and thought, let's fight them in court and see where we can go. But unfortunately, now we're in a situation where no one's happy. You can't convince me that FIFA is now content with what's going on at the moment. So we have to look for an alternative, and I believe we will.
Yeah. Okay. So, are you going to go on to talk about football services a little bit?
Yeah. Well? Okay. I will go through it, but now I understand. That you're more into the conversation mode. So I'm a little bit nervous. The rest of the slides, but I will continue. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make here with the football agent services, and to say directly to the people that are listening and watching now, or the people that are going to be advised by the people that are listening and watching now, is that you need to be very clear about what specific service is being provided, because the football agent service or football related service performed on behalf of a client, including any negotiation, communication related or preparatory to the same or other related activity with the purpose, objective and or intention of concluding a transaction. The first definition. This creates a limit, but it also creates lots of openings, because apparently everything that is not connected to these services do not fall under the regulations of FIFA, not on the FIFA regulation. So I think you need to be aware of that a lot of issues fall under other services, which I'll touch upon later. But what I really want to point out is the following, and that can create an absolute nightmare in the industry. So I truly hope that people will not push that red button constantly, but I'm afraid that we will see that. If you look at football agent services, there are a lot of services that can be done by people that are not a licensed agent or not an agent at all, because the management of a career, in a sense, could be considered to be other services, and therefore you don't need an agent license. One other element that is marked as a football agent services but does not fall under that, in my perspective, not directly under that definition of a transaction, for example, is an approach. Up until now, the far majority of agencies that I know don't have their main agent man doing the calls or standing around the pitch during training to approach players, their parents, in order to find out if people will be interested to take their services.
I do, Roberto. But most companies that I know have, so almost scouts, their own people looking at the games and talking to parents and what have you.
Exactly. So that is exactly what that is exactly the problem, because if now an approach can only be made by the licensed football agent, many companies where one person that before this collaborated with a number of scouts, what on earth does he need to do? Be present in 5 places at the same time. It's going to be difficult. And that will not only be a problem, because also quite well, Tony, I'm quite sure that we have a lot of WhatsApp messages circulating around the world saying, if you're interested in our company, feel free. And now I am also defining it in a more pleasant way, because you can also think about messages saying your current agent is nonsense, because he did this and this and this and that, and come to us,
And that's an approach under the FIFA regulation.
It's worse now, because every message that you send via WhatsApp make a screenshot out of it. Someone can make a screenshot out of it, send it to FIFA under the warning system, and then there's an official complaint, and people will research your activities. So obviously this leads to a nightmare situation. So please be careful in relation to that approach, and structure your company or advise your clients to be very strict on administrating these kind of activities. The world truly has changed in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, speaking from my own perspective and the perspective of many agents, administration isn't our strongest point. When the English HMRC are asking for proof of dual representation and how many meetings did you have with the club, we're not great. I just generally speaking, taking notes on every meeting, logging every meeting, logging every conversation. It's, another 20, 30 hours on your month's work, isn't it? So it's opened a real can of worms in that respect.
Yeah, indeed. I'm trying to be a bit quick now, Tony, because I realize the time and I don't want to take away too much time of away Gregor's talk and potential questions. Other services. The point I'm trying to make here, where the other services, again, define the services that you're carrying out, because now you'll be confronted with a situation that there's a cap on the earnings that you can achieve via football agent services. We know the cap 3 + 3 are 10% in certain situations. But I'm convinced that there were many, many agencies that were actually doing a lot of combined services and shoving them all under the job placement, the football agent services issue. If you are asked by a club, if you are aware of a potential talent for that specific position, and you will go back to your office and you will work with your data people and you will screen the whole team and you will come up with a suggestion, for a specific player. In my perspective, that's not a football agent service. It's a scouting service. If people are from a club are asking you to negotiate a contract and they will say, listen, we will pay you a fee now, but we will continue to pay that fee every year. And one of the reasoning for us behind that is that we want you to be there along the way that the player is there. So we want you to make him feel good and not unilaterally terminate his contract or whatever. What is the club asking you? The club is actually asking you to manage the career of the player and to make him feel okay. The club is not asking you to trigger a transaction. No. So I would not agree that the club will pay me for those services and include those services under the cap. The issue is, and that's why you need to be very strict on admin and be very clear on that. The issue is that your suspicion is upon you, that you get these two, that these will be combined to fall under the cap. But if you're able to make clear what kind of work you've done, then obviously there's a bigger chance that you will be able to separate those business and at least minimize the loss of those caps to your company. It will not be easy. Yeah. But at least it will create some clarity. And obviously we can discuss about this for quite a long time, but
thanks.
I think that's...
Yeah. Thanks, Roberto. Do you want to hold on to this slide? We'll tackle that a little bit later. What I'll do is we talked about the legal challenges around Europe, and you identified the certain territories where there's legal challenges going on. I did before we get on. We won't mention Germany in this particular bit because we're going to go to Gregor after that. But my question would be, what about that CAS case where it was an agent body who I'm not really familiar with, Profa or something like that it was called. What happened in that instance, guys?
Well, Gregor took up the phone, so I'll leave it to you, Gregor.
Well, as you all know, the CAS is an arbitrational court, and they handed down an arbitrational award, and which FIFA obviously celebrating at the judicial answer to all the questions that have been raised. However, it being an arbitrational award, it actually has no value whatsoever. It's not an ordinary court. It cannot be enforced outside the parties involved in the case. So in here, what happened is Profa and its members are bound by the CAS arbitration, even if they would work in Germany, whereas everybody else who works in Germany can roam freely. Furthermore, the circumstances surrounding that award are, let's say, at least suspicious. The German Federal Supreme Court in the Pechstein case, which was decided last summer, actually voiced severe doubts against the Court of Arbitration for Sport being an arbitrational court in the genuine sense of the German procedural law. And that the verdict or the award that has been handed down actually underlines that. Just to give you one very brief example, there is in competition law, you decide between a regulation that actually is made to infringe on competition, whereas there are regulations that have a different goal, but like as a side effect, infringe competition. The first are what is considered a hardcore cartel. There's no way in justifying them. The second can be justified. Now, CAS said, the Court of Arbitration said, well, the new FIFA regulations are not a hardcore cartel, and the plaintiff, being the agents, failed to prove that they have a competition infringement as a side effect. That is, you can read that as, I think it's line 257 or 256, something around there. Basically, with CAS having said that, the case is over. Case dismissed, end of story.
Yeah.
In the next line or the next line after that, CAS says, well, but FIFA actually has acknowledged that these regulations have a competition side effect. You know, which is from a lawyer's point of view, you ask yourself, wait a minute, you won the case. Why on earth are you actually now saying, well, yeah, they have a side effect? We agree.
Yeah.
The only reason why they did that is because they wanted to open the way for CAS into what is called the Mecca-Medina test, in order to give, so CAS could voice that these regulations, based when tested against the Mecca-Medina test, actually are valid and are in line with competition law. The reason why they did that is because they know the European Court of Justice will exactly administer that test. And they wanted CAS to say that. And that is my theory. I don't have any proof for that, but you know, the entire award reads like that, and there's some other circumstances around it that are very suspicious. I would assume they knew what CAS was going to say. Right. So from my
headlines, Gregor, made headlines for sure.
Yeah. From my point of view, that award is worthless.
Right.
And it's certainly not what FIFA deems it to be. It's an arbitrational court. It's not an ordinary court. Therefore, it's a nice read for scholars, but from a practical point of view, I'd say, well, yeah, whatever. Okay, who cares?
So Gregor, talk to us about Germany and what's happening in Germany.
Yes, Germany, the land of milk and honey for agents. Well, Germany at a very early stage has been confronted with legal challenges to the new FIFA agent regulations. The earliest case was filed in front of the District Court in Mainz in 2021. It being a preliminary case where the plaintiff was seeking an injunction against FIFA. That injunction was rejected based on the fact that the court said, based on a procedural question. There's two kinds of injunctions in Germany. One is harder to prove than the other. I don't want to bore the audience with judicial details. However, that the district court mindset, this injunction is the one where you have to prove, where the burden of proof is harder. You have to prove serious economic damages. You plaintiff weren't able to do that, so they denied the injunction. They did not, and as FIFA wants us to believe, FIFA always says we have won every single case except the one in Dortmund. That is simply not true. Yes, they have won cases on a procedural matter, but as Roberto rightfully pointed out, it's the same is true in the Netherlands, the same is true in Mainz. What really counts is the merits. And what the District Court of Mainz then said in the main proceedings, they actually referred the case to the European Court of Justice, saying this legal issue touches upon European law, and we want you, European Court, to give us advice on how to handle these questions. And in that, what is called a preliminary ruling procedure, the court has the chance, they don't need to do that, but they can, to give their opinion to the European Court of Justice. And the District Court of Mainz has done that. And if you read through their opinion, they are of the same opinion as the District Court of Dortmund. They said these regulations violate European competition law. So they denied the injunction on a simple procedural question, but on the merits, they share the opinion of the District Court in Dortmund.
So Gregor, at the moment, what are agents doing? And, is it everyone who's an agent in Germany, or is it German nationals, or is it German players even, or I don't know, what is it?
Well, that's a very good question. I'll get to that in a second. Just to elaborate a bit on what Dortmund said. Dortmund, the case that actually stopped the FIFA regulations in Germany, they said, well, we have a different opinion as Mainz is concerning the procedural questions. We believe this is the security injunction, which is a lot easier to get. That's what it is, and therefore we grant it. That's why they stopped it on a different procedural answer to the same question as Mainz. On the merits, what Dortmund said, they're of the same opinion as Mainz. What they said, and they said that is literally in the judgment, this is a hardcore cartel that cannot be justified, period, end of story.
A hardcore cartel?
It's in the ruling. I'm quoting from the ruling. I'm not making this up.
I can think of hardcore cartels.
Yeah. That case has been appealed. The appellant court Düsseldorf will hear the case on January 24th. Up until then, 2024. Up until then, the enforcement of the new regulations in Germany has been exempt, and FIFA and the German National Association had to pay 150,000 euros each because they did not comply with the Dortmund ruling. So the court had to ask them all, please pay and please now do what we tell you to do because we are a court of law. Now, what does that mean? Finally, after FIFA paid their 150,000 euros, they issued a statement saying that retrospectively, as of May 24th, the FIFA agent regulations, the new ones, no longer apply in Germany, and everybody having a link to the German market is exempt from these regulations. Now, the big question is of course, when do I have a link to the German market? In the FIFA statement that was publicized, they said everybody who has a link to Germany has a link to the German market. Now, that does not help very much. So the question that everybody is asking themselves is, what is a link to the German market or to Germany? I unfortunately can't answer that question. I can only tell you what is not a link to Germany. It's certainly not enough because that is something that has been governed by the ordinary courts in Germany. It is not enough. Let's say you're an English agent doing a transfer from an English club, an English player from an English club to a Spanish club, and you go and you have an intermediary agreement or an agent agreement with the Spanish club, and in that agreement you write, this agreement is governed by German law. That is not enough. That is not enough.
Yeah.
So if any of the parties involved, whether it's the agent, any of the two clubs, or the player is a German national, question arises: is that enough of a link? Yes or no? What definitely is enough, if any of the parties is actually domiciled in Germany. So any international transfer to a German club from a German club, any international transfer of a German player is exempt. So
yeah.
So go ahead.
So when you mentioned the European courts, it's sort of been people are challenging in their local their territory. When is the European court likely to give us some? If there is a hardcore cartel, a competition, when is that likely to happen? Because these rules have come in on the 1st of October. FIFA are sticking to the guns, and
yeah, which is and I think Roberto has summarized that correctly. That is one of the problems that we're facing. The European Court of Justice will probably not rule until 2025. So we're facing judicial limbo for next 24 months. Now,
four transfer windows.
Yes, which may even be enhanced if the appellate court Düsseldorf on January 24th upholds the decision of the district court in Dortmund, because then you have a situation where Germany really becomes that shiny city on the hill where everybody is exempt, everybody's trying to get into Germany, trying to get a link to the German market to get legally around the new regulations.
What is the price of an apartment in Berlin, Gregor?
Well, there's cheaper places than Berlin.
Yeah, everyone can have a little look at Germany and see how they get on.
Get out of your lederhosen.
Can I have a remark in that?
What's Harry Kane doing in lederhosen? It wasn't, I suppose it's in the contract, but
indeed it is. Yes.
You want to continue to speak about lederhosen of Harry Kane? No worries, but now I wanted to make an extra point, which is something that maybe not everyone has been thinking of, but the German link will be valid for the whole world from the moment that you prove that you have that German link. So the situation, well, quite funny. Let's put it like this: in the Netherlands, I bring a player from whatever, Barcelona to Ajax. Yeah, I want to be active on the Dutch market. However, I work via a vehicle or a company where is established in Germany. So I want to be active in the Dutch market to bring the player to Ajax. I have a German link. That means that the FIFA football regulations will not apply. The FIFA football regulations place on the National Football Association the authority or the obligation to implement these regulations, the national football agent regulations. So that means that these national regulations will also not be applicable to me because they're a product of the FAR.
Yeah.
So in what kind of legal landscape do I arrive then? I have no idea, because I spoke to the KNVB, the Dutch FA, and I said, well, then apparently the Dutch regulations apply. No, they don't apply because the football regulations don't apply. So what applies? I think just general law in relation to job placement applies to my activities in the Netherlands or any other country if I have this German link.
Yeah.
So if I would be FIFA, I would really be very seriously thinking about trying to amend this situation, as I mentioned before. So that's an interesting one. So all the people that are listening now, if someone has a German link, not only look at the regulations that apply in your specific country, but look at the civil laws that actually govern job placement services. And the funny thing is, in the whole system of job placement throughout the world, and I'm still a lawyer, so I know, there is this International Labour Organization treaty that has been ratified by around 40 countries that states, like in the Netherlands, and it's probably what people know it from, that the actual worker can't pay, is not allowed to pay for his own intermediation.
Yeah.
You don't want to be stuck between a rock and a hard place where you're not applying the FIFA regulations, but at the same time are circumventing or breaching civil laws.
But funnily enough, Roberto, you've just touched on something, because our FA sent out a circular, the English FA, sorry guys, I'm based up in Newcastle. they sent out a circular about their up and coming national regulations, but they also put a little attachment on to say those services where recruitment agencies and the law that governs recruitment agencies, they're looking at how football agents work. And that was just like, you open another can of worms, but it relates to the point that you're making about, well, what actually does govern if there's nothing else in place? So, the football association haven't elaborated on that, but they threw that in there. They put that in a circular saying, we're having to look at all the recruitment agencies in this country are governed by a certain code as well. So that was just more complex, putting more a complex situation, making it worse. Let's move on to the national associations, because under FAA, the national associations were supposed to have their rules and regulations in place on the 30th of September, the day before the FIFA regulations came in. Who hasn't done that?
Well, Germany hasn't, because they were prohibited from doing so.
Yeah.
No,
So
the Dutch have, with the exception of the caps and the limits of dual representation.
Right.
And some other countries have done so as well. For as far as I know, in Italy, there's been no clear implementation. In France, obviously, the situation with the national laws that prevail. And I also heard from many countries that they've actually just one-on-one implemented the FIFA regulations. So it's a scattered landscape everywhere.
Yeah,
I wouldn't start for every country in the world.
England have delayed doing their regulations. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that? Because I think there was 4 of the big agencies. I think it was Stella, Reiter, Unique. I think there was about 4 agencies. Jonathan Barnett was very vociferous about FIFA. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what's happening in England for some of the guys on the call?
Well, in all honesty, in England, what we've learned is obviously that's a huge confidentiality around the Rule K arbitration procedure, and we just can't say too much about it. I'm not going to create any potential idea about it. Let's 30th of November. That's what we know.
We're waiting for news the 30th of November. We're waiting for news in Germany. Was it the 24th of January, Gregor?
Yes, that's good. Well, on the 24th of January will be the oral hearing.
Right. Okay. Yep. So let's move on. And Gregor, in your role, and congratulations on being a member of FIFA's football agent working group. Congratulations on that. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, FIFA created, under the new regulations, they created that agent working group. Honestly, I don't know if I'm exempt from it now, considering that I'm German. So far, there was one meeting held on May 25th in Zurich, which was quite an interesting meeting on an interesting date, because the meeting was held roughly 24 hours after Dortmund handed down their judgment and basically stopped the new regulations in Germany. Now, I mean, generally speaking, without going into the details of the new regulations too much, I think it's actually does make sense that FIFA speaks with the relevant people in the market. It needs, however, to be one issue needs to be addressed, and as far as the agents are concerned, although FIFA has always said we have had a dialogue with the agent, and there have been talks before implementing the new regulation, that is simply not correct. The agents up until today are not considered a stakeholder in that entire game, and that is something that needs to be remedied in order to come to serious talks. The meeting in itself was interesting. What was probably the most interesting part was the fact that FIFA tried to brush over the Dortmund judgment by saying, yeah, yes, the regulations have been challenged in court, and yes, we have won everything. And when I interfered, I said, well, yeah, but remember yesterday, I said, yeah, what does one district court really mean? It's really nothing. And I was like, well, I mean, it's a district court in one of the big 5 markets that has implementations on all over Europe. I think that is something that you need to take serious. And it showed, which then was further underlined by the fact that they actually got fined by the court. It showed that there is a certain attitude within FIFA that they believe themselves to be above the law. And I think it's about time that the courts tell them, no, you're not. You will have, if this is, you can make your own laws by saying whether a game of football is 90 minutes or 95 minutes, whether it's a red card, a yellow card, a green card, or blue card, we don't care. But when the game is over, you will have to adhere to our laws and our rules and regulations, and you can't just make up your own. And that was one of the most interesting takeaways. The other thing was, and still is, with all these new regulations that FIFA celebrates as the answer to all questions within the agency business, one question is not answered, and it was not answered during that meeting either, is how on earth do you want to enforce these regulations? There's nobody, literally nobody at FIFA that knows how a transfer works. They don't know how it's done.
Right.
And in order to regulate a market, you must be able to enforce the rules. And you can only enforce the rules if you understand how the market works. FIFA does not understand how that market works. FIFA does not have the capacity to enforce the rules. So that's what I meant earlier when Roberto told me that I would be the bold one today. I think from the interesting part about the new regulation really is not so much the cap. I know that's the one as a practitioner you're really worried about. But the interesting part is Article 13, which implements the clearinghouse system. Because what will happen in reality is, should the new regulations really be enforced all over the world, the clearinghouse will show that all of a sudden payments to agents will drop to 6%. Everybody knows that will never be the case, because there will always be ways around it and possibilities to circumvent it. But FIFA, and that's why I believe, and I've said that publicly, it's basically, it does not serve the market, but it's a propaganda coup, because Infantino will all of a sudden appear and say, yeah, I told you so, it's only 6%, here, look at my clearinghouse numbers, yeah, I'm the great hero. That's not going to be the case. It's going to hurt. It's going to create more intransparency in the market, and it's not going to hurt Manchester City. It's not going to hurt Erling Haaland or their agent, but it's going to hurt the clubs in the Championship, the clubs in the second Bundesliga, the smaller players, the smaller agents. And that is really and that is something that, from my point of view, FIFA does not care about. They don't care about that. So just wrap it up and then I'll answer your question or any question. The next meeting is going to be in Saudi Arabia in December. I'm wondering if I'll be invited after what I've said over the past few weeks and months. And well, we'll see what happens then. I'm certain that FIFA will celebrate the CAS award and say that is the only award that is relevant for us. We will not have any new verdict at that time out of Germany. We may have one out of England. Hopefully that will be in line with the District Court of Dortmund. And I think if England really allies itself with the German courts, I think that might serve as a wake-up call to FIFA, saying if the two biggest markets in Europe say, no, we're not going to do that, we really have to adjust those regulations.
And I would like to that
Sorry.
also to if you allow that the situation in the Netherlands, and also for the people that are present here and that are in one way or another involved in national cases, it is very, very relevant what happened in the Netherlands, because basically the Dutch Agent Association, Pro Agent, went to court claiming that these regulations need to be suspended, at least until the time that the European Court of Justice will come out with an answer to the questions of Dortmund. Having said that, the case is still pending, and we went into appeal in order to still try to get an interim injunction. But now the clubs and the KNVB actually requested FIFA themselves for a suspension. So we've actually won the case without even going now to an oral hearing. So it is a very important step to show that even national FA and clubs are actually willing to suspend the regulations. Some countries, the FAs, might be afraid to organize that because of sanction and repercussions of FIFA, which you understand because it's a pyramid system, and obviously the regulation of FIFA need to be implemented. So I get that, and I get that primal fear. But if I would be a judge, I would actually help those parties and say, okay, if you don't feel the power of or the authority to cancel these regulations for the time being, I will help you and we will do it, because it's tremendous amount of proof that even clubs and associations are not able to fully comprehend the value of these regulations in this sense. Again, the objectives are legitimate, I believe, and I think every judge will say the same. Only the proportionality is a very big issue.
Guys, I do have a question, and it's: were you surprised that FIFA went ahead on the 1st of October and said, yes, they're coming into full force on the 1st of October, whatever that means for all the territories that we've mentioned have their own situations going on. Were you guys surprised that they didn't sort of say, well, look, we've got England, we've got Germany, we've got this one, let's put it back to the 1st of February and let's go for the January window as it were? What's your take on it?
Well, if I may, Gregor, first, I'm naive by choice, I would say, Tony. As I really become frustrated in this international football industry, and I thought at a certain moment that they would realize that it would really become a burden, and it wouldn't be losing their face if they would say, "Come on, let's see what comes out of these court decisions, and then have a sound next step." But obviously that was not the case. They chose to do it this way, and well, I'm not sure if it's 100% being convinced that these regulations are totally in accordance with competition law, or if it's just a tactical legal strategy. I was surprised in a way.
You were surprised.
Well,
Gregor?
it would have been wise after the Dortmund judgment was handed down to say, well, we have a suspension in one of the big 5 markets in order for everybody involved to get legal clarity. And at the same time, we had a pending preliminary ruling procedure with the European Court of Justice. And for everybody within the football market to have clear legal fences, to have a clear legal situation, will suspend until the ECJ decides. That would have been wise. Having said that, it does not surprise me that FIFA implemented them, because wise and FIFA is simply not 2 words to be used in one sentence.
I don't think you're getting invited back to Riyadh.
No, I don't think so either. But it actually underlines what my suspicion. This is politically motivated, and not. It is covered up as something good for the industry, which it is clearly not, as I think has been made clear, and it's politically motivated. But let me I just want to comment on one thing that Roberto said earlier, and I really, because that's actually very true and shows that in Europe, as always, the bold guys are the Dutch, because what the KNVB and the clubs have done without pressure from a court, having stood up and said, no, we're not going to do this, we cannot implement that, really shows where the power lies. And if a small football association as a KNVB has the guts to say that, I would call upon the big ones in Germany, in England, in Spain, to Italy, and France to follow suit. Because if they say no, this is creating a total mess, we're not going to do it. Let the ECJ decide, and if they decide it's proper, fine. But if they say it's not proper, then we're not going to do it. I think that would be the correct way of doing that. And therefore, when I heard about the decision of the KNVB and the Dutch club, it's really something that you must applaud them for.
Yeah. So let me just ask about France and Italy. So if you're a registered, a FIFA licensed agent, currently not resident or based in Italy or France and Germany, if you're not based in those countries, does that mean you cannot do any business with those countries unless you do the exam in France, and it seems to me like they've got a bit of protectionism in particularly France and Italy. What do you think? Is that naive, or is that?
What would be naive exactly, Tony?
Like, have the French got they've got total control of their market, and it's hard for people who are not based in France or haven't got the French agents exam, but the FIFA license agents to work in France or Italy?
Yeah, well, I think they still stick to the same situation, and that you will have the system where the FIFA license is your gateway to many countries. But Italy and France, if Italy moves into the direction that it seems to move now, then you will still need to collaborate with an Italian agent or being based there, like in France's situation, or have an equivalent license. I think that the same criteria will apply, that you will have to prove that you have a certain amount of years that you're active, have been active as an agent.
Right, okay.
Which is not easy, because we know that many agents are not able to work in France at all because they aren't granted the license there.
Yeah, right. Let's go. We've got some questions here. We've got a quarter of an hour of the webinar left. Mario says, and whoever wants to answer it can jump in. What do you recommend agents do in countries where there have been no national regulations formulated as required by FIFA, like in the USA, especially when dealing with solely national issues?
Yeah, well, that's problematic. And from my perspective, I think you will have to look at civil law, and that's problematic. That's what you need to do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Murray asks, have the other UK home nations, so obviously England have got a suspension on their own national regulations, have the other UK home nations, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, adopted the same position as the FA in England and suspending FAR until the 30th of November?
I'm not 100%. I don't know, Gregor, about you. No.
That's a very good question. But I would, from the top of my head, I would say I haven't read anything or heard anything that they have done so. So I think for now it's only the EFA, and I can't assess the implications that has on the other three national associations.
As far as I know, Scotland has been limited also.
Okay.
Similar as England.
Yeah, and it will be quite a small market, Scotland and Northern Ireland and Wales as well. Adam has a question. If I am in a country that has to abide by the new FAR, the service fee will be agreed within the representation at FIFA's rate. So if I had a player transferring to Germany to any extent, would I still have to abide by FIFA's regulations?
No. In that case, you have a clear link to the German market or to Germany, because the new club is German, based in Germany. That's a clear link to Germany. Therefore, the entire transfer, everybody involved in that transfer will be exempt from the new regulations.
And Adam says also, would my agent's license be valid to conclude the transfer?
Yes, because in Germany, what Germany has done in as far as that exempt situation is concerned, we have simply extended the current regulations. So in Germany, you would still have to you would still have to register yourself for the transfer, as you would have needed to done all those many years ago. Yeah.
So you would need to be registered in Germany as a licensed agent in Germany under the national regulations.
Correct. Just one bit of knowledge. Germany, the German civil law does not know a license for employment agencies. So if you are an employment agent, which you are as a football agent, that is a trade that you can do freely in Germany. You don't need no government license. You don't need to register with the government. There's very limited regulations. The only thing that you should know is there's a cap on fees by national law, but only in as far as you are being paid by the athlete, by the employee, not
Right.
by the employer, the club. There's no cap. You can take whatever you want, but there's a cap in relation to the athlete.
And you would be able to do dual rep or something like that?
Yes, dual rep is legal under German law. Yes. What you need to do there is you need to disclose that to all the parties. Everybody needs to know that you're representing everybody. But as long as they know that, it's fine.
So it's transparent, right?
Yes.
Anonymous question. I think this is better for you, Roberto. Can you explain what an agent can do with regard to approaching players? What is the best practice when you can't be in more than one place at a time? We touched on this, didn't we?
Yeah, I would say that in terms of, if I would just quickly share the screen again, I will not go into, I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can see that.
Well, obviously, that in terms of conclusion, the question would be, in terms of division of services, what services do you offer? And obviously seek to minimize the loss, I would say, in that sense. And that also falls under the bigger heading where this question could be charted under. If you look at what kind of, because obviously the question is, I as a football agent, and do an approach, blah, blah, blah. If you want to be on the safe side there, and you have a company with multiple people working there, and you realize that the approach as you know it normally would be under scrutiny now, because you would ask someone from your firm, or from your agency to do the approach, then it could be problematic. But it also depends on how you do it, because you see many agencies, again, make a division of your services. If you want to approach a player by saying, listen, we have a management company, an agency, we do a lot of services in terms of general management of a career. I'm not aware of the fact that you have a professional representation agreement in terms of job placement, so I don't want to go there. But in any case, this is our firm, this is what we do. Look at it, and perhaps you're interested, and I would focus on the services that do not require a license in that sense. Is it circumventing the rules? I don't think so, because you're actually saying, we're providing also some additional services. And then I think it's also better for the player because, or his environment, because he's free to have a choice also, does he want to divide his services that he takes on by one company or the other company? It might be a little bit difficult for starters, but if you want to be on the safe side, I think you can create perfectly a WhatsApp message, that follows all the rules, ticks all the relevant boxes without running the risk that your competitor is immediately taking a screenshot and sending it to FIFA. I think you need to be very aware of how to position yourself in that sense, and I think it's possible.
And I think with all these regulations, when it comes down to it, and there's complaints, there's people doing what people are acting like you said there. Will FIFA have the teeth and will there be enough people in FIFA to administrate all of this? And it could potentially.
But Tony, that's the point, that I'm making, because on the one hand, FIFA is saying, The other services, you're free to carry out other services. But by the way, if you do carry them out, we assume you're circumventing the cap. So we need to know every other service that you're carrying out. You know? So it's a little bit of a paradox there. So if you are able to define what other services you are offering to your client, yeah, then FIFA can't do no other than accept it, you know? And if you don't take me seriously, well, it's not my fault, right? The one person can do scouting and do management by picking up the phone and diving into 30 years plus of experience in the market. The other person uses a data system and provides you with 50 pages and all nice pictures and how fast your player is and so on and so on and so on, you know?
Absolutely. We just had a comment which is useful from Nathan Chambers, Nathan was very, very good helping people with education to pass the agent's exam in various, well, in English. So thank you for that, Nathan. He says Scotland have followed suit with England. Jeff also says the Scottish FA has intimated to FIFA that the implementation of the new national football agent regulations had been scheduled for the 1st of October will now be delayed. So they've gone into line with the FA as well. The Scottish have gone in line to the Football Association. Christophers asks, are there any other national FAs that have suspended the implementation of the new rules on their own initiative? And do you know where I can read more about the Dutch FA's decision to do so? So thanks for that. That's for you, Roberto.
No, I'm not aware of FAs that have done it on their own initiative.
Yeah.
I don't wanna push too much that the FA in the Netherlands did it on their own initiative. There was a court case pending, you know, so that was also one of the objectives and the motivations for taking this decision. I'm not sure. I think that today they've published something on their website, but yeah, I think people have our contacts if necessary. You know, they can get into get in touch. We can.
You guys are on LinkedIn and you know, got your various social outlets, so that'll be interesting from the Dutch FA's point of view. We're just getting towards the last couple of questions. Again, anonymous. If you have a connection to Germany and are planning a transfer from Germany to the Netherlands, I think we've answered that one. I think, yeah, any transfer that's got Germany in the title, you know, German club. So we'll move on to the next one. This is again what we spoke about from anonymous. Would conducting agent services through a German entity be a link, Gregor?
Well,
even though the transaction doesn't involve a German club.
I can share my. Oh no, I can't, because otherwise I would show. Can I share my screen? Because then I can show you what FIFA has said.
Your screen, yeah. I think
it's been deactivated. It tells me
now, Gregor. Just hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
See, it's already FIFA has deactivated me. For all the things I've said.
It's been.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. You can.
All right. Okay, you should be able here. The bottom part where it says a link to the German market will be deemed to exist as soon as any party to a transfer agent, club player, or coach has a link to Germany. That is basically what FIFA has says. Therefore, to answer the question, if the agent is an entity within Germany, German based, then yes, there is a link to the German market, even if club, player, coach, whoever is based outside of Germany, non-German clubs, non-German player. As long as the agent is what the question there is it enough if the agent is German, or does the agency have to be domiciled in Germany? I would say I would say the latter is definitely safe. I have a client who's German, who's not based in Germany. He's asked me the same question, and I said, "Well, go base yourself in Germany." So yes, if that is the case, then you will have a link to the German market. However, if you're now all planning on saying, well, great, I'll just rent a room in Berlin, Munich, while the Oktoberfest is just over, so don't go to Munich, Frankfurt or wherever, keep in mind, once you have an entity in Germany, you will be liable for taxes in Germany, at least with that entity. And if you don't do it properly, the German tax authorities are being extremely aggressive. They actually might come knocking down your door and say, well, it's great, well, you pay taxes on what you've done in Germany, but all those other millions of euros that you've earned outside of Germany, you're a German entity, so please pay taxes here in my country. That is, so if you plan on doing that, please double check with the tax attorney.
Thanks, Gregor. Listen, we're almost out of time. I'm just going to go to Roberto. I know you've got an important call at 4 o'clock. Just finishing comments, Roberto, please.
Well, just like Gregor mentioned, also obviously people will be looking for ways to structure their business in a way to minimize loss. I think it is necessary to look very critically at what kind of services you provide and if you're able to define those services. And obviously, we are looking into situations where by following the regulation, you will still have enough flexibility to minimize the loss. You know, I can't promise that you will be able to earn the same amount of money, but perhaps your business allows it to minimize the loss. A lot of businesses won't because they're solely focused on intermediary services and transactions. But yeah, we're always open to discuss and see how a specific business is structured and to find potential ways to assist agents. You have to realize, Tony, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place again. On the one hand, we believe that regulation is necessary. And on the other hand, we are very critical towards these sets of rules, and the members of EFAA and agents in general, their livelihoods and their actual lives, you know, are more important than the regulation. So I can understand that you will have to look to find ways to survive.
Thank you, Roberto. So listen, guys. Really, that hour and a half, that 90 minutes has gone past so quickly. This is a really dynamic and changing situation, as we've tried to outline. I think we need to do another one of these, maybe after the FA tells us what they're going to do. So thank you so much, Gregor. Really appreciated your comment, your company.
You're very welcome.
And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's been absolutely fantastic. Really interesting 90 minutes. And thank you so much, Roberto. The European Football Agents Association are sort of at the heart of this ongoing dynamic situation. So let's hope we can get as much clarity as possible for you guys. And thanks for attending.
Can I just mention that on the 8th of November, we have another quite big event supported by EFAA in Wembley. Take note of LinkedIn, and hopefully, Tony, we can collaborate also.
We'll get all the guys, all the information. There was a couple of people. If you guys can leave us now, that's absolutely fine. We're going to share some slides. I've got to thank George as well for supporting the webinar. He's going to be able to share some slides, please, George, with the guests. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and good luck out there.